Welcome in to Bears Weekly, powered by IGS Energy, a Chicago Bears network production. Bears Weekly is brought to you by Advocate Healthcare, Athletico Physical Therapy, CDW, Connie's Pizza, IGS Energy, and Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Jeff Joniak, a.k.a. the Mayor of Bearsville, and his sidekick, Tom the Surfmaster Thayer.
We are back at it again. Good to be with you tonight, and thanks for joining us on Bears Weekly, unpacking the loss to the 49ers and previewing the May match with the Vikings with Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak. Our good friend and former Bears quarterback Jim Miller will be along in just a while as well. From Sirius XM NFL Radio and in the ESPN studio spinning the dials tonight, Justin Pottinger. Thanks to our producers Dan Brilli and Jordan Tredup from the Bears, and the executive producer of the Bears Radio Network is Eric Ostrowski. Coming up, our interview with Bears head coach Thomas Brown from our Bears Etc. podcast this morning, and part of my sit-down with starting right guard Matt Pryor that aired on Bears Game Day Live prior to the 49ers game. Good evening, one and all. Tom Thayer, how you feeling? And a lot to unpack tonight.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. You know, the thing about it is nowadays in the modern world of football, you get right to work as soon as you get on an airplane. Before, back in the day, we used to have to wait 24 hours for the video to get ready, and then you got a chance to look at it the next day. That's not the case anymore. By the time you get on the bus, you have your video on your tablet. You go right to the plane, a 3-hour plane ride home, and then you start making corrections. It's not something that you can sit there and dwell on what just happened. You got to sit there and watch the tape constructively and see how you can make corrections, adjustments, and improvements. And I think that's the way you go about business from the end of the football game until the start of your next football game. And whether you're an evaluator like you and I are, or if you're a coach or a player, you have a different way about going to watch the tape. And, everybody has to do it according to their improvements.
Just think what Jim Miller has to do. Former Bears quarterback joining us tonight. Big Jim, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Well, you have to watch all 16 games every week.
Yes, that's true.
You got to go through the tape.
I didn't spend a lot of time on Jacksonville, Tennessee. Trust me. I did not spend a lot of time.
Let me ask you this, though. With the all 22 that's available, do you honestly, in terms of preparation, because you're doing a daily talk show specifically to the National Football League, are you watching as much tape as anybody, or do you even have time for that?
Yeah, no, I think you can. Like, if you know, like, the big matchups, like tonight, obviously there'll be the big Monday night matchup, but tomorrow I'll watch the coaches' tape of it. So I'll watch tomorrow. It goes a lot faster than, say, a 3-hour broadcast. The tape runs a lot quicker because you don't have any of the commercials, and it just goes play to play. So, yeah, you can watch it and then do a pretty in-depth breakdown of a game, say, of a Monday night matchup.
All right. So what are your thoughts on what transpired yesterday? Obviously, another slow start. Yeah. They tried to crawl back in it late in the second, and not late, but early start in the second half, and just didn't have it yesterday.
Yeah, I think I think Thomas Brown was put in a tough spot. I think he was elevated to call plays and to continue the development of Caleb Williams, and then of course you have this change with Matt Eberflus, and now more is thrust on his plate. Which, whether we like it or not, I don't know how fair that is to Thomas Brown, but that's what the situation is, and they're trying to make the best of it. So I think that's why they did start slow. I think his attention to the offense, had to take a back burner because now he's delegating to the whole team, where his one job was to get the offense up and running and get the quarterback. So there's a lot they're having to manage right now, and I think it went kind of how it went.
Jim, what do you think about the quarterback situation specifically? Because here you are, a guy coming in with a lot of attention paid to you since the end of your college season, and then you start that journey towards the draft. Then you go through the draft process and on to the OTAs and hard knocks and everything else that's involved. And now you have, the second voice in your ear through the start of a rookie season. What do you think the trials are for a guy like Caleb up until this point and throughout the season?
Yeah, I don't think it's been ideal for him. And he's had his part in it too, because he was a part of choosing the offensive coordinator, and And hopefully, in my opinion, hopefully that's not on his plate for the next head coach, because Caleb Williams shouldn't be choosing the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. And so whoever is chosen as the Bears, that's who's going to have to work with Caleb to get him up and running to the to where it needs to be at the National Football League to win games. And it's not ideal. I think you can see now the frustrations with Caleb. I think you've seen his demeanor, at least the fourth quarter of the game against the 49ers, where it's kind of wearing on him. I mean, let's face it, he's the most sacked quarterback in the league. He's a little shell-shocked right now, and they have to finish strong, and he's got to continue to push through, and that's where Thomas Brown, hopefully his focus is on for his young quarterback.
Well, Thomas Brown certainly embracing the moment. This is something that he ultimately wants to be. He wants to be a head coach in the National Football League, and he's taking it head on. And he's taking it head on in terms of what went right, what went wrong yesterday. So we'll hear some of that. But I appreciate his honesty and his thought process throughout the course of all the interviews he did today and after the game last night. But he feels there's no loss of confidence, and there's plenty of optimism, and they're going to battle forward all the things you need to have in your room to continue to make some progress here, and focusing on just another week of prep. They thought they had a really good week of prep. Players said it. They said it after the game. They said it before the game. Coaches said it, but it just didn't translate to the grass completely on Sunday, Tommy.
Yeah, and listen, I was expecting a high excitement performance as well. And I thought the conditions were perfect for the Bears. Obviously, the outdoor playing conditions, the fact that there are some injuries for the San Francisco 49ers that I thought would affect their performance. But now, again, we talked about it at the beginning of the show. You have that opportunity to make the corrections, to watch the tape on the way home, to take that time in order to figure out how you're going to make corrections and adjustment on the way home. And then you get into the meetings today. But it's almost like you have to leave that behind you now, because you got to start talking about what the Minnesota Vikings do, what you can take the good portion of the game, what can you take and add it to the Minnesota Vikings? How can you look at the last game film that when you played the Vikings, put a lot of study time into that and what you did well and how to continue that process? What did you do in the second half on the offensive side of the ball that you really like that you can add from the beginning of this game all the way to the end?
Jim, did you, when you played quarterback, and it could be college or pro, your coordinator, was he at times on the sideline or at times in the booth, and which did you prefer?
I had both. In college, he was in the booth at Morris Watts. He coached over 50 years at the college level, so he was well-versed in it, and he went both pro and came back to college. And then in the pros, it was both ways. I've had both the coordinator on the sideline, which was nice, and had him up in the booth. But either way, you can talk to him. Just because he's up in the booth, you still have the phone where you can just get on the phone with him and talk to him and talk through things and talk through the pictures if you need to. And a lot of times it's just by choice, where maybe the OC wants to get the bird's eye view or the bigger picture rather than being up close and personal down on the sideline where you can't get that overhead view that you need.
Did you ever consider going into coaching and being an offensive coordinator or quarterback coach?
Yeah, I have decided. I've been asked to do that, but it's got to be the right situation, obviously. But yeah, I have been asked to join staffs. But it's coaching is kind of a nomadic life. It really is. These coaches move around, and it's really shortened even more, but it would have to be the right opportunity.
Jim, what kind of coordinator would you be?
Multiple. I think you got to be able to do everything. You got to have every club in your bag and make them defend everything. So whether that's, your base offense to if you need to go 5 wide, so you better have everything. But you better be able to run the football too. It'd be similar to McVay's system is what it'd be, but it'd be multiple where you can do everything.
And my last question about this, Tom, I'm intrigued. I don't know. After losses like this, things just pop into your head. Had nothing to do with the game that I'm asking these questions, but in terms of that, the kind of system and whatnot, I know I talked to Tommy earlier today on our Bears Etc. podcast about Kurt Warner. Mm-hmm. Some of the things he's saying about getting rid of the football quickly, trying to make big plays and whatnot. There's all these ex-quarterbacks and quarterback gurus that they call themselves gurus and teachers, and they have quarterback camps and whatever. So everybody's got opinion on quarterback play. What is your strongest statement about quarterback play today in the NFL for young players that you think needs to be tweaked or worked on?
Decision making. Okay, ultimately, the most important job you have as a quarterback is your decision making, because a game can be won or lost by your poor decisions. And I think we've seen that, for young quarterbacks, even for Caleb Williams, a bad decision by not calling a timeout, So obviously, it stems from there. I think you better be tough, both mentally and physically, because that's how you gain respect in the locker room. Your quarterback needs to be one of the toughest guys on your team, if not the toughest, mentally and physically, to take the beating from the press, to take the beating from your teammates, to take the beating from your fans, and turn those jeers into cheers is what you got to do. You better be a hard worker. You better be preparation. But all the stuff in terms of the intangibles, loving football, all those things need to be a part of it. And then, of course, the tangibles. And I think we know Caleb Williams has all the tangibles. What is that? Arm, speed, athletic. He's got all those things that are moldable traits to be successful.
And he definitely has the intangibles as well. We're going to come back after a break. That's Jim Miller, Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak, and we'll hear from head coach Thomas Brown after this break on ESPN 1000 and the Bears Radio Network.
This is Bears Weekly, with the voice of the Bears for 24 years, Jeff Joniak, on the Bears Radio Network.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by IGS Energy. Jeff Joniak, Tom Thayer, and Jim Miller. Earlier today, I sat down with Thomas Brown, the Bears head coach, for our Bears Etc. podcast. Took kind of a different route of discussion on all kinds of things about the game and about him. Let's listen in. I know you've already talked a lot about this game and the benefit of traveling that kind of distance. You do get a lot of work done on the plane, don't you?
Absolutely. Just having a chance from a prep standpoint, headed there, but also on the way back. It gives me enough time to be able to grade both sides of the ball and also take a peek at special teams as well. I try to always, watch all phases multiple times, so I have a more accurate picture when I end up meeting with the coordinators. But definitely get a ton of work done.
Let me ask you about that because I learned to watch tape from Tom Thayer, Super Bowl Bear. So over the course of my career, I don't know assignments or anything like that, but it's just that ability to watch things over and over again, it slowed the game down for me to call the game. When you first started playing football and you ran the ball at Georgia, did you, before you went to the NFL, did you know how to watch tape?
Absolutely not. I think coming out of high school, you don't really watch much tape in high school. It's normally everybody's in the same media room and the head coach might have a couple of clips to show from the other opponent. But I think like anything else, it's a skill you have to develop when it comes to understanding what you're looking at, but also, understand how to break down the actual film. So watching the game is one thing. Building cut-ups in preparation is something different. So we try to do a really good job as I learned throughout, we talked about the years at Georgia of what am I looking at. I think when I was a freshman, I'm just watching tape and the tape is running. I have no idea what I'm looking at. I'm not necessarily reading coverage or looking at linebacker dimensions. I'm looking just for big plays. As time goes on, you understand to look at, formation alignments from a defensive standpoint. Are there any pressure tells, indicators when it comes to how linebackers' feet are, also how guys kind of play and defend certain blocks so you kind of anticipate certain reads. But I think like anything else, repetition is the mother of learning. So the more you hear it, the more you see it, the more you do it, the better you become at anything.
Yeah, the crazy thing about it's the subtle stuff. It's the hand placement. It's the footwork. It's how somebody's lined up. The uniqueness of the greatest players that in a split second can do something that 0.1% of the entire award is capable of doing because of their strength, their athleticism, or their instincts, right? And that's the beauty of watching tape, because if you really slow it down and watch it over and over and over again, it almost paints a different picture every time.
There's no question.
Don't you agree?
It's like watching poetry in motion at times. And I think, That's why I oftentimes get irritated when people speak about athletes or football players in general of not being intelligent. You have to be highly intellectual to be able to understand and diagnose and process things in a split second and make a full speed decision with the game on the line. So I think it's all about, kind of what you commit yourself to. And as you mentioned before, the greats become the greats because of their habits and what they repeat on a regular basis, but also what they can kind of do a really good job of with tendencies. So I try to do a really good job with the offense of how we marry formations and motions. I'd even just talking with Caleb about his mechanics and demeanor in the pocket, pre-snap wise. They're going to keep everything off of your hand placement. That you grab the towel before the ball comes, any mannerism they can pick up on before the ball snaps. So trying to be as uniform as possible. They can't get a key on when the ball's going to be snapped.
It's almost, and I play baseball, so I always used to hitch before I threw. And sometimes if a fast runner, you got me, But almost every quarterback taps before they throw, though. To me, that's an indicator, right? But it is part of the ritual that you grew up with, or you can't. I mean, it's just you, right? Do you find that interesting that a lot of quarterbacks tap it first?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to habits. I think whether you create good habits or bad habits, they still define who you are. And so, as you mentioned, a lot of QBs do kind of pat the ball before the ball comes out. I remember being in L.A. and listening to our DBs coaches talk about pattern matching, reading, QB ball out break. A lot of those guys would make their breaks off of, QB pats, ball's about to come out, so they would go trigger and drive on the ball. Which to me, if you're aware of that from a quarterback standpoint, you can play off of that. And you can dummy, tap, make a defender drive for double moves and throw the ball behind them. So, but it's definitely all about kind of playing the game within the game, and also how much can you disguise and minimize the tendencies you kind of expose to the other opponent.
So with that being said, when you watched it again, and you'll watch it again with the team, what are some things that you feel are correctable from the tape from yesterday's game?
Yeah, the execution first and foremost, as far as our assignments, our details, and how we execute the plays. I think plays become just lines on a sheet until you bring them to life. Something the more clarity we can give our guys, a better understanding, the better they can execute. Obviously, again, we played a really good football team. This is the NFL. There's no D League of the NFL, so it's the best of the best that are here. And so week in and week out, you're going to face really good opponents with really good players, and so have to be ready for that challenge and be up to it. I think also when it comes to separating, motivation and confidence from actually execution. I think our guys were definitely motivated. They were definitely confident. We had a really good week of preparation. But the game day execution is what matters the most when it comes to winning and losing football games.
And with that becomes the psyche of a player or a team. Do you feel that you have a pretty firm grasp on the overall psyche of the team, especially one that now has unfortunately lost 7 games in a row, because that could go many different ways. But you've been there the whole season, and it's not just now that you're in charge. You have had a good sense of it. But the hopes of a winning season, for example, are dashed. But now it's about just putting your best foot forward for the Final Four. Do you have a good sense of that from these guys?
Yeah, I feel like I do. Obviously, anytime you drop 7 in a row, I'm not going to say the psyche is going to be in a great spot. That would be unrealistic and not a true statement. But I think as far as our guys' belief in themselves and the ability to be able to fix things and get better, that's not lost. I think there's definitely still a good continuity in the locker room as far as their belief in each other, which is one of the big points of emphasis I wanted to make last week as far as staying connected, unifying as a football team. So we had an opportunity to continue to move forward. And ultimately, we're all paid to do our jobs. And so regardless of feelings, those don't really matter. I think feelings come and go. As a grown man, you have to do stuff sometimes that you don't feel like doing. And our responsibility is to attack every single day and be at our best. And
this converges with the Monday night game. National attention. They're going to be looking at us. They're going to be poking at us. They're going to be looking at, what's next and everything. How do you plan on telling these guys, hey, listen, man, this is us on Monday night. We gotta stay together, which I don't doubt you won't. But we gotta really play some really good football against this Minnesota Viking outfit.
Yeah, I think my message continues to say the same as far as the outside noise. I think it becomes harder for our players at times because it's a social media generation, so everybody looks at their phone, they watch every TV show. I don't look at anything on purpose in football season. I don't really care about the outside world or what their thoughts are, even if it's positive. It doesn't help me do my job any better. And so I'll keep the same message as far as, yes, a primetime game, yes, Monday Night Football, yes, the whole world is watching, but the most important thing is how we prepare and being able to play at our best when it matters the most.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine that's super difficult.
It is difficult.
Because that phone, man, that thing lights up. It was lighting up during the broadcast for me. I'm like, I can't look.
Yeah, I just turn notifications off, and I do have a little small Instagram deal. I scroll past certain things, don't even look at it. Even if it's positive, it doesn't matter. I'm just keep scrolling and look at something different. So I think, diet is definitely, what you put into your body, but also diet is also what you allow to go into your ears and also in your eyes. So I don't care who you are or what you think, that will still have an effect on you from a subconscious standpoint. So I choose to always ignore it and block it out, particularly during football season.
I need to take that advice from you as well, buddy.
It's hard. It's
yeah,
hard.
It is hard. Let's talk about some. I want to talk about DeAndre Swift, because when Homer goes down, no Roshan, he's the man, right? You got Darrington Evans there, but he's been around for 3 years, but hasn't been here much this season. And I was looking at the workload, okay, because it was going to be him in the second half, and clearly that long drive was a part of it. But is he capable of a good, heavy workload? I went back and looked. Last season against Minnesota, he went 28 for 175, 21 for 73 against Carolina this year. So he's capable of handling a big load if necessary.
There's no doubt about it. I think he's in the right mindset and the right framework as far as how he competes and prepares every single day. But the issue sometimes when it comes to that position is how volatile it can be. It's a very volatile position. So I think playing running back every single snap, you're either getting hit by multiple people or you've been asked to hit people. So there's very, very few snaps that are kind of end up being non-contact downs for a running back. But I think he's taking on the task. He wants to be in the entire time, and sometimes you got to save him from himself, so he doesn't wear himself down. But you want to have that mentality versus the other way. And
then what did you think? As a great player, watching great players, you never get sick of watching greatness. And Keenan Allen is that the fastest to 950 catches in 150 games, as it turned out. Now 11,000 yards, sixth active. There's only 14 players that have 1,000 catches in the NFL. So I know it's in a losing effort, but that's significant. It's kind of cool. He's part of the Bears, although he's been, the L.A. Chargers guy. But to have that happen in this game.
Yeah, like you said before, I mean, South kind of gets overshadowed at times because of our record and losing football games. But greatness is greatness. And as you mentioned, he's been one of the best for a very long time and continues to prove himself to be consistent. I said it back in training camp. I think the guy's unguardable when he wants to be able to kind of have some one-on-one opportunities. So continue to prove himself every single day, and we'll continue to find ways to get him involved.
Do you feel like within Dunze, still learning, obviously, but a good connection with Caleb? You got Cole Kmet, you got DJ, you got Keenan, other players as well, that these guys all are capable of being uncomfortable.
There's no question. I think that's a benefit of having the guys that we have, and we have displayed at times. Didn't necessarily showcase itself yesterday, but I would say that the previous games before that, 3 in a row against 3 of the best in the league, those guys have consistently made plays, and we continue to find ways to get them open. And obviously, Caleb has found them as far as with accurate ball placement, rhythm, and timing. That's definitely important. And you obviously mentioned Rome. Rome is the youngest of all that bunch, but I mean, that dude is to me is already special and continue to be special in the future because he's super detailed, an elusive route runner, has really strong aggressive hands. So love all those guys kind of get involved in the game.
All right, now look, we got a long week. So last question. What's it going to be like getting in the ring again, going toe-to-toe with Brian Flores?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the best in the league, if not the best. I think he actually did reach out to me after the first time we played him, which I think was great of him. And I do appreciate it reaching out to me, and I exchanged a couple of texts with him. But it's going to be harder than it was the first time. I think once you kind of show your hand and expose yourself, he does a great job of adapting and adjusting and giving you some new looks. Their defense probably has the most disguised to it of any in the league. So it'll be about trying to prepare our guys the right way, particularly, Caleb from a quarterback standpoint of understanding different looks, how to diagnose things fast, but also the ball distribution, put the ball in play, and, not losing the game because of the stuff that they do as far as how they impact the coverage units.
Do you mind a follow-up on that with him? How rare is that, and had you guys a previous relationship?
I met him one time briefly, just at the combine, just kind of just walking in past, and I just told him how much respect I had for him, introduced myself to him, and kind of just kept moving. So, not much dialogue before that, but I think it was really cool and also humbling of himself. Again, he is regarded as one of the best, if not the best in the league at his role, and so I think it's also a good testament to the display we had from an offensive standpoint, that you garner respect of one of the best in the league. And it'll be another tough test for us on Monday Night Football.
That was pretty cool. That's a pretty cool story. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time. As Bears head coach Thomas Brown, we'll get reaction from Jim and Tom after a break here on ESPN 1000. This is Bears Weekly on the Chicago Bears Radio Network.
This is ESPN Chicago, WNVP, WTBC, HD2 Chicago, a Good Karma Brands radio station.
Welcome back to Bears Weekly on the Bears Radio Network. Here's your host, the voice of the Bears, Jeff Joniak.
Have a new or gently used coat laying around? Well, head to your local Jewel Osco until February 10th and donate one of your new or gently used coats to the 36th annual Chicago Bears Coat Drive. Help keep Chicagoans warm this winter. Jeff Joniak, Tom Thayer, and Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio. Get your reactions. Thomas gave us a little bit. Maury talks. Maury's available. Jim, he gives you some insight into what he's all about as a football man. I got a kick out of that interview.
Well, I mean, he's got a lot on his plate. Like you said, you've got the big picture, the micro and macro view, so to speak, and he's trying to put everything together, but yet still try to develop young players. Here he's talking about Rome Odunze and Caleb, and so that they're all on the same page. So there is a lot ongoing. There's been a huge disruption. I would think it would be more settled this week, and like you said, it'll be in prime time in a big matchup, and there's plenty of play for everybody involved.
Big Tom, what do you thought?
I just like the seriousness in this tone of voice and the preparation, as Jim was talking about how you get to learn a little bit more about him every single time that you get to interview him and we get to listen to him. And I'm really interested to see, as the second time around inside the division, how he, what subtle changes he has in his game planning, how it affects the team on the field to play, and then how the team comes out and gives a representation of respect to Thomas Brown, because this is still going to be an emotional team. Minnesota's got a lot to play for, and the Chicago Bears players should have a lot to play for as well. And whether, whatever you think, Caleb is the future of this football team. And so you got to do everything in your possible to continue his development and his protection to make sure that he gets through the game, he plays as well as he can possibly play, continue the development, that relationship with Rome Odunze in all the offensive assets, and let's roll this on Monday Night Football and walk away with something you can be proud of.
I also felt strongly about what he had to say to the media at his morning news conference as well, because, they felt that they were ready to go, but, inspiration is different than execution, and the execution wasn't always there. And that was in both offense and defense, obviously, fellas. Tommy, you can jump in.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And, that's the interesting thing about it, is because you have that work time on the airplane home, you have the work time when you got there this morning. I'm sure that he was up and at him early before he met the press. And now what you have to do is you have to go in there and see how to address the football team when you get to meet with them for the first time before this game. You got to see how you're going to talk to Eric Washington about the adjustment you'd possibly make on defense, and then what he's thinking and the offense and where he's going with the good things they did in the first game, the good things they did yesterday, and where they can go with more immediacy. Try to make those first and second quarters as profitable as you've been able to do in the second halves throughout these games. So start fast, get Caleb, off to a fast, fresh start, and then get on the attack.
Jim, in your course of your career, just observing and analyzing, is there a common denominator for slow starts for teams?
Well, I mean, when you fire your head coach, you'd like to think there's a sense of urgency, right? But I think with that disruption, like I said, and things should be more settled this week, because when Eberflus was let go, now it's set in place a chain of events, right? Eric Washington now elevated to the defensive play caller. Here, Thomas Brown, who was just elevated to call plays, now he's elevated to now delegate to the whole team. Now he's now got to spread his time thin, now talking to Eric Washington. How is he going to call a game? So there's a lot of working parts here, is my point, that has been put on Thomas Brown's plate. And, yeah, I think that sense of urgency was there. I think that's real. I think everything's authentic about what the coach said. But with the situation last week, it'll be more settled this week, because that is a lot of disruption for one coach to go through. And he basically changed his hats 3 different times in the last 3 weeks, Thomas Brown has, all having different requirements that are being asked out of those jobs. And so I think we could give him a little bit of a break. But I would think it'd be much more settled this week.
Tom, sorry, Jimmy.
Nope.
Tommy, defensively, Thomas mentioned also in that about communication issues on the back end of the defense. Those are things that can, in my opinion, unless I'm wrong, easily corrected.
Well, anything in the NFL is not easily corrected, but you have to do it, as he said, repetitiously. And the more you do it, the better understanding you get, and the better you play, the better you understand each other. But the Bears have a group of veterans in the defensive backfield with Kevin Byard and Jalen Johnson, and now Tariq Stevenson has the experience. They've gone through a couple of other secondary safeties, and they have Kyler Gordon. So all these guys, they have to be up to snuff in their communication, because they got to be able to control a tight end, a couple of good receivers, a quarterback that's really playing well right now, and they have a back that catches the ball well out of the backfield. So however that back 7, back 8, they work together, they have to do it and being on the same page every single play, every single down and distance. And when you talked about Thomas Brown, how you watch tape, the Bears have to make sure that they put in their tape study to see if they can get any hints or clues or keys before the ball's ever snapped.
Tom, what would be the impact if Gervon Dexter can't go? We don't know. We're not going to know injuries really until Thursday, at least. So Travis Homer, DeAndre Carter all left the game, obviously, as well. Homer, concussion, DeAndre Carter, ankle, Gervon Dexter, ankle.
Well, Zach Pickens recently came back. You have DeMarcus Walker. You have Coward. You have guys that are reversible, changeable, and can play up and down the line of scrimmage. You may even have to explore some opportunities by putting Montez Sweat on the inside at the 3-technique defensive tackle to see if he can give you some immediacy of pressure on the inside there, because then that's going to change the responsibility of the offensive line at the last second, and they're going to have to talk about making adjustments. So I think when you look at guys even like Daniel Hardy and the rest of the outside pass rushing crew, they have versatility within this defensive lineman. So if you can do something that's unsuspected by the offensive line in their preparation during the week, maybe you can create a little confusion and a little apprehension on their protection that gets you to Darnold a little earlier.
Tom mentioned the name of Daniel Hardy. And, Jim, I don't know that you had a chance to meet him when you were at Bears training camp this year, but this is a guy who he got here the hard way, right? Like he definitely overlooked, and then he plays constantly, hair on fire. So he and Amin Agbangbamiga are special teams tackle leaders, and that was an area that also was recognized by Thomas Brown as being that was the violent, physical, very good play yesterday from special teams. Those two guys are a part of it. Hardy heard from again on special teams. That can't be understated. We only focus, obviously, on offense because it's Caleb Williams. He's the number one pick. He's the future. And then we talk defense. But, boy, special teams has had some good moments.
Yeah, they really have. And, obviously Hardy, I remember him in the preseason. He played with his hair on fire. Like you said, he had an impact and all that. And that needs to continue because, like you said, now when guys are a little bit banged up here, Tom's talking about Pickens is obviously his numbers and his snap totals could go up. This is the point in time of the year where everybody's got to grab an oar. It truly is. How deep is your roster? Everybody's got to help out. And you're going to be expected to play. And other teams have been able to weed through that part of their schedule. And these are the games that normally you want to be in that matter, right? End of the year, division matchups, and that's what's going to be key in this game for the Bears. I thought it was interesting because Minnesota just played the Falcons. Jesse Bates, the safety of the Falcons, he said, we did not play as a secondary to the physical stature of the Vikings. Well, what does that mean? You got Justin Jefferson, and you've got Addison, who basically climbed the ladder and made a big catch in their game. But Jesse Bates said that's where they failed. And we interviewed actually Raheem Morris today, head coach of the Falcons, and he said that. He said, yeah, we did not, when it came time to contest the pass where we needed to play bigger and make the plays, we did not. And that's where they thought they failed. And obviously this is going to be a big test for the Bears secondary against this Minnesota group.
A note to the secondary. A note to the secondary. I also want to talk. Torrey Taylor had a good day. Really good day, bombing punts for sure. So when we come back, Matt Pryor, we'll listen in to a conversation with him. As that's coming up next here on Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 and the Bears Radio Network.
Bears Weekly with Jeff Joniak on the Bears Radio Network. Welcome back to Bears Weekly on the Bears Radio Network. Here's your host, the voice of the Bears, Jeff Joniak.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by CDW. People who get it, Jeff Tom and Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio, getting things ready for the Minnesota Vikings. Early start to the week for us. Well, Monday night at one of the best stadiums, if not the best stadium in the National Football League. It's going to be loud. Vikings are currently on a roll. We'll dig into them in a moment. But first, a portion of an interview I did. This was a little while ago, so this is prior to Thomas Brown being elevated to head coach. But Matt Pryor, the Bears starting right guard, just his experience so far with the head coach.
It's just a different energy. He carries himself well. And, he lets the room feel his energy. Just his mindset of, being physical up front and, getting solidified in the run, which is what's, I think, helped the offense kind of, expand on plays is getting in there and being able to run the ball efficiently and running it early. And then not only that, but getting the ball to our playmakers early. And that's what he's doing a great job of doing. And just his mindset, the physicality and, playing offense and up front. He's real hard on us up front. So, it's just it's good. It's nice.
Do you like that? Are you a guy that likes being coached hard?
Yeah. I mean, I like hard coaching. Some people don't respond to it well, but I've had it my whole career, not only in the league but in college. So it's not new. Yeah. I came from Philly, so you got Coach Stoutland there, and Coach Stoutland's going to coach you hard. But he means well by it. So I'm used to it. I like it.
And you don't have a problem with physicality because you're the biggest guy around. And you don't have a problem with physicality because you're the biggest guy around. There's only so many people walking the planet like a Matt Pryor.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, you play O-line, you got to like being physical. So, it comes with the territory.
How does your length, wingspan, which is massive, and you and I have talked before on the radio side just about using that length, but how do you use it to your advantage and not have it become a negative? Because sometimes if there's a shiftier, smaller guy and get under you and boom.
Yeah, I think with a shiftier guy, it comes more down to being patient and, throwing your hands. But, obviously it's a lot more, I don't know how to put it, but like the complexity and being taller in the interior has its, weaknesses and pros. But it's a lot quicker in engagement when you're on the inside compared to being out on the edge. I kind of use that to my advantage on, dudes with shorter arms and whatnot. But, it is kind of shifty with the quicker guys just because you don't know what they're going to do. So it just comes down to being a little more patient and throwing your hand.
Following your timeline, you've been through organizations that really value running the football, from Indy to Philly, certainly San Francisco, certainly here too. I would take that as a compliment because they're investing in a guy like yourself.
Yeah, man. They did a great job in all three places I've been at running the ball on, and here they follow suit. Just being able to go out there now and getting that job done is great, especially when you have the runners we have and Swift and Roshan, and, allowing them to go out there and do what they do.
How do you feel when people talk about your versatility? Do you look at it as a positive? Obviously, everybody says the more you can do in the league, but for a guy like yourself, I don't know what you envisioned when you came into this league, what you wanted. Obviously, you want to start, but where and all that, but because they keep moving you around.
I say when I first came in, I expected to be a tackle, and I kind of got tricked. I'm not going to say tricked, but I went on my 30 visit. I went out to dinner and sat down with Stout and Chung, the assistant O-line coach, and they kind of baited me into saying I'm a tackle, and Stout didn't like that. It's kind of when you're a young guy, and
right.
When I got drafted there, they had all pro, offensive line, Brooks, Lane, JP, Kels, and me going there, I was like, man, I'm never going to play, just because the how good that O line was. So the only way I see I could get on the field is if I was able to play everything. So that's kind of what I try to do. But obviously, everybody wants to just settle down into one position. But when it comes out like this year, I had to play tackle. Yeah. But if it comes down to me having to go out there, I don't have no issue. I'm a team guy. I'm going to do whatever the team needs.
And that really is the story on Matt Pryor. Tommy, this is your area of expertise. Give us an update on this young man. And he's a delightful guy. Loves being here, too. He loves playing here.
Well, the thing about it, body size is no longer only isolated to one position. If you have the athleticism, the bendability, and the mental part of the game, then you're going to be plugged in anywhere you can possibly help out the offensive line the most. And we saw Matt move around the offensive line up and down wherever they needed them the most. But I do think when you have a player of his talent and his ability, and the longer he can play one position longer, the more familiar he becomes with all the nuances of that position, how he can be most beneficial to the right tackle, how he can help out the center the most. And then the offensive coordinator gets to learn a little bit about what his strengths are and what type of plays that you can run directly behind him, how you can use him as a pulling athlete out in front of the plays. And then on pass blocking, what can he do at his best to make sure that you can put the protection in the place where you use that big body, that big size. So the more that you keep a guy in one spot, the more you learn about his strengths and vulnerabilities, and then I think the more you can build an offensive game plan around the consistency of having an offensive line in place.
Jimmy, you like that big size on the interior? Help you out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got the big guards, and because I wasn't running anywhere, so the firmer the better up there to shore it up a little bit. But it's so much of a space game. We know the tackle's got to be able to move, and then when you have the versatility and flexibility like Pryor, he can play more than one position, which always helps, and that's going to add your value to a roster. Obviously, the sack totals have been a problem. I mean, they lead the league in sacks. It has to get better, not only from a upfront standpoint, but from a quarterback standpoint as well, processing and getting rid of the ball a lot faster as well. And we'll see where it goes here as they close out the season.
All right, when we come back, we'll preview the matchup on Monday night against the Vikings in our final segment. This is Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 and the Bears Radio Network.
This is Bears Weekly with the voice of the Bears for 24 years, Jeff Joniak on the Bears Radio Network.
This segment of Bears Weekly brought to you by Athletico Physical Therapy. Visit athletico.com to request an in-clinic or virtual appointment and start feeling better tomorrow. Final moments here on Bears Weekly. Tom Thayer, Jim Miller, Jeff Joniak. So this quarterback, Darnold, I think his first name is Sam. Where is this coming from? 28 touchdown passes, 5 yesterday. I think, Jim, the more remarkable thing is Justin Jefferson caught his first touchdown pass since week 3, but 5 all told to he and Jordan Addison. Danger.
Yeah, he's playing with a lot more confidence. It was interesting. I was watching Caleb Williams, his mannerisms out in San Francisco on the bench when they saw me. You just see him taking a deep breath, kind of rolling his eyes a little bit. That looked like Sam Darnold back for the New York Jets days. But now you look at Sam Darnold, he looks like he's in control. I think you see how big his arm is. He's athletic. He can move around. He can make plays. And Coach O'Connell really has done a good job with his decision-making. He still has some turnover issues, but they've been able to overcome it, and they've been able to win with Sam Darnold. So I think it's a remarkable comeback story. So Geno Smith, and now you probably add Sam Darnold to the mix. He looks very relaxed this year.
Tommy?
I have really admired what Darnold has done, because there's a lot of people that thought that his career was basically on the over. And actually, when they started at training camp, I thought they brought him in to be a camp arm for J.J. McCarthy. But they obviously have done a good job of coaching him. But then you look at the offensive assets that he's there, not only from the running back with Aaron Jones and the tight end Hawkinson and the rest of the receivers he's had. He's really taken advantage of his opportunity, and he's done a nice job developing. And I think the Bears have a opportunity to get right back on track by limiting his success, putting pressure on him, getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and get yourself an interception or two to get your defense back in the right side of the ball.
And I just wonder what Flores, the defensive coordinator, has in store for this one at home. Things he didn't really show in the first meeting, because they didn't blitz a ton on Caleb Williams in that game the first week, Tom. We only have 30 seconds, by the way.
Caleb was throwing completions. So the thing about a blitzing coach is you throw completions, then you don't blitz them very much.
Jim, you feel the same?
Yeah, you just gut them. Make sure you get completions, and they'll get out of the blitz. Totally agree.
All right, it's going to be an interesting matchup as you get back into the division. 4-pack of games to wrap things up. Jim, thanks again for taking the time to join us. Appreciate you, buddy.
Always fun. Good to be with you guys.
All right, that's going to wrap us up. For Tom Thayer and Jim Miller, and special thanks to Thomas Brown and Matt Pryor. I'm Jeff Joniak. Thanks to Eric Ostrowski, Dan Barilli, and Jordan Tredup. And, of course, Eric Ostrowski is our executive producer of the Bears Radio Network. Thank you, Justin Pottinger. Coming up next, we've got Bleck and Abdallah. This has been Bears Weekly on the new radio home of the Bears, ESPN Chicago. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Chicago Bears Network presentation of Bears Weekly, hosted by the mayor of Bearsville, Jeff Joniak, and Surfmaster Tom Thayer. Podcasts are available on the Chicago Bears official app. Brought to you by Verizon and Apple Podcasts. Bears Weekly has been brought to you by Miller Lite.